So this is a picture of Gregory Mendel, who we call the father of genetics. So he was an Augustinian monk and a high school teacher. He liked to keep pea plants. So if you've never seen a pea plant, you should Google it, but they have lots of different colors of flowers. So some are white, some are red. And he noticed also that the pod shape of the peas was different with different plants, and he was really curious about why this happens and why things look the way they do. And so we did these huge experiments and recorded everything meticulously. And it was his records that enabled us to get to where we are today, which is the study of human genetics. So he is called the father of genetics, but there's lots of videos out there about Gregor Mendel. It's actually kind of interesting. So traits. Traits are physical characteristics like your eye color, hair color, height, body hair, freckles, etc. So these are things you can see. These are things you inherit from your parents. So you get half your genetics from mom and half your genetics from dad. And we're going to talk about in a second why you might look different from one or the other. So heredity is the study of how traits are passed on through generations. So parts of your chromosomes responsible for passing on traits like eye color, etc. So heredity, also called inheritance, is what you're getting from your parents. It's people that study that. So genes are the actual chromosomes that have those instructions that tell your cells what color to make your eyes and how you should look. So generations, you'll notice that there's a square box that says parental generation and a oval box that says parental generation. That represents the mom and the dad. So like the box would be the dad and the brown would be the mom. This is they got married or they had a child. And so down here you see F1. These are all their children. Then these children had a baby with the circles. So these would represent like a male child and a female getting married or having babies, and then they have children. So you notice here's F2, F2. So they had a girl and a boy. So this would be like your grandparents having children, and one of these is like your mom and dad, and so this would be like your mom and dad, and then they have a child, which is you, and so that would be like the F2 generation. DNA is the basic map. These are the instructions that tell your body, your cells, what to look like and how to function. So it's called deoxyribonucleic acid, and so it's found in the nucleus of every cell, and it has four different proteins: thymine, adenine, guanine, and cytosine, and they're just paired up together in different combinations, and all those different combinations create drastically different things. So from your eye color to your hair color to your nails to your blood cells, they all look different based on the instructions that are included in that DNA. So if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see an example of a double helix. So that's what they call it. And you'll see those different colors. On the left-hand side, you'll see the DNA model there, and you'll see the different proteins represented by the different colors, green and yellow and pink and red. And you'll notice they're all connected in different order. So depending on the order they're connected in determines what the cell will make. Allele pairs. So this is a pair of genes for a trait. You get one from your mother and one from your father. So for instance, hair color. So let's say dad has dark hair, mom has light hair. So you would get a gene from dad for dark hair and a gene from mom for light hair. But then we're not real sure what you're going to look like until we figure out which one of those genes is dominant and which one's recessive. So the two genes together make an allele. That's what we call them. And a dominant allele is something that is represented by a capital letter. And a recessive allele is something, or gene is something that's going to be represented by a lowercase letter. And we're going to talk a little more in a minute about what dominant and recessive mean. So these are letters that represent, or genotypes that represent the different traits. So for instance, homozygous means that they're both dominant or they're both recessive. They're both the same. So let's say capital B represents brown hair and lowercase b represents blonde hair. Well, brown hair is dominant. So you'll notice that the allele from dad is the first B, the allele from mom is the second B. So if you inherited those, you would definitely have brown hair because they're both dominant. The little b, if the little b represents blonde hair and you got a recessive from dad and a recessive from mom, then you're going to have blonde hair. We call it homozygous when they're the same. When they're different, we call it heterozygous. So in this case, you would have a big B, which represents dark brown, and a little b, which represents blonde. Because the B is capital, that means it's dominant, which means you would have brown hair. Phenotype. So this is what you actually look like. So if you were describing this dog, you would say things like, he has brown eyes, floppy ears. He's extremely intelligent. So all these things, the way that you would describe this dog are basically things that you can observe or see. That's a phenotype. A genotype, however, is the actual letters that represent the genes that this animal has. So, for instance, you'll notice brown eyes. Brown eyes are dominant. So the first B came from mom, the second B came from dad, and because he got two dominant alleles or dominant genes, it was a dominant allele, which means he now has brown eyes.